Welcome to week 3 of Connectivity Problems. We have been looking at how we can restore connection in relationships that have lost a signal. Last week we looked at how Jesus handled conflict and how we can let conflict deepen our relationships instead of damage them. Conflict can make connections weaker if not handled with care. And when conflict goes wrong, it can completely break a relationship apart, and then forgiveness is required to restore that connection.
Yeah, forgiveness is hard. For most people, two of the hardest words to say consecutively are, "I'm sorry." So have you had to say, "I'm sorry" this week?
It was pretty rare, but I actually did have to say it once this week.
I have not heard it yet, so it must
it wasn't
be
to you.
Sam, I guess.
I apologize for this one fairly often. I'm not a clutter person, and I'm always walking around our house, putting everything away or throwing it in the trash, even if he's not done with it. And the other day, he filled up a glass of water, set it on the counter. I immediately walked by, dumped it out, put it in the dishwasher, and he turned around like, "Where's my water?" And many of the other things he had left on the table were also gone. So I did apologize for that one, even though partial credit for cleaning up.
Yeah, a lot of credit for cleaning up. Me and you and Jesus are clutter-free people. So sometimes we're the ones saying, "I'm sorry." Sometimes we're the ones saying, "I forgive you." And that can be a hard phrase to say too. It's even harder to say and genuinely mean it. To not let the offense keep hurting you and affecting the relationship. Some relationships have some very minor connectivity problems, but a lack of forgiveness can cut off the connection altogether. You know, the parent and the child, they don't speak, the siblings refuse to see each other. You know, these awkward holidays are even split up because, you know, two people just can't be in the same room. This is what struggling to forgive, it's what it can do to relationships.
In Matthew 18, Peter asked Jesus, how many times does he have to forgive someone before he can end the relationship? He throws out a number, he tells Jesus, how about 7 times? It seems reasonable. 7 times is pretty far, but Jesus surprised him and said, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Jesus knew 7 times it wasn't going to be enough. We're imperfect people in relationships with other imperfect people, and things get messy. Hurtful things are said and done. Without forgiveness, all relationships would end, and probably pretty quickly.
Yeah, in a lot of weddings I do, I'll say the math here in the relationship is this: perfect or imperfect person plus imperfect person. It does not equal perfect relationship, but it can be good, it can be excellent, and it will be life-giving. And we see this in one of the great stories of the Gospels. It's a story of forgiveness. It's the story of the prodigal son that's found in Luke chapter 15. So here the father had 2 sons, and the younger son asked his dad for his inheritance early. And like what he's essentially saying here is like, "Dad, I don't really care about the relationship with you. I just, want your stuff." And the dad, he gives the son the money. I'm guessing his heart was totally broken, but he let him go. The son immediately wastes all the money by having big parties and whatever else he is doing, and he ends up with no money. He ends up hungry, working in a pig pen, and the Bible even says he just longs to eat the food that the pigs were being fed. So he realized he made a huge mistake. He swallows his pride, he heads home, and he says those difficult words to his dad, "I'm sorry, I was wrong."
Yeah, sometimes we're the younger son in this story. We know we've messed up, we know we need to apologize, and the younger son had 2 options. He could continue living in his tough current reality of being estranged from his family, or he could have a difficult conversation that could possibly restore the relationship. Admitting our mistakes and confronting those that we've hurt is daunting, but going through that brief moment of discomfort is more than worth it for the future years of meaningful relationship we get back. The son isn't expecting to be welcomed back into the family. He's planning to say, "Hey, can I work as a servant?" He doesn't expect forgiveness and reconciliation to be waiting for him at home. He was expecting judgment and punishment. And he finds both forgiveness and judgment waiting for him at home.
Yeah, so the father sees him from a long ways off, and he runs out to hug him, which just the very fact that he was seeing him from a long ways away means that he was watching and he was hopeful this was going to happen. The son is quickly embraced by forgiveness. All his fears about how he would be received, they just went away instantly. The father was not concerned about the son's past. The father was celebrating where he is now at home and seeking forgiveness. The father cared, listen to this, the father cared, here's what the forgiving person does. The father cared more about the future of the relationship than the past offense. Forgiveness, it does not erase what happened in the past, but it stops the past from hurting the future.
Yeah, the older son, on the other hand, who had been at home, he did let the past continue to hurt him. He wanted his brother to be punished for what he did. He was angry and bitter. He goes to his dad and complains, I've been here doing the right thing every day. You should be celebrating me, not him. And meanwhile, the father threw this huge party to celebrate being reconnected to his younger son, and the older son stood outside the doors of the party, angry and annoyed. The older son was not ready to forgive. We've been the younger son before. We've also been the older son before. We've been hurt and offended. We've compared ourselves to others and been judgmental of them. We've struggled to forgive and held on to our anger and bitterness. And the only person still suffering at the end of this story in Luke 15 is the older son that refused to forgive. We've stood outside the doors of that party, either refusing to go in or just unable to go in because we're still so hurt. And maybe we want to forgive, we want to join the party, but we're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, so in Luke 7, Jesus, there's another story. Jesus forgives a woman who's made many mistakes. Then he tells the crowd that she's grateful because she knows how much she's been forgiven. But a person who is forgiven little shows little love back to others. Now, we forgive others generously because we have been forgiven generously. The older son believed he had done everything right. He didn't need forgiveness, so why should his brother get so much? But everybody needs forgiveness, especially those who don't think they need forgiveness. That's called pride. And once we recognize all the forgiveness we need and experience God's free forgiveness for ourselves, the better we're going to get at forgiving others. This is where humility is so important, knowing who we are, who we're not, and who God is. Both sons had sinned. Both sons had been disrespectful to their father. Both sons had been selfish. But only one son was at the party. Yeah, I remember during COVID, I would have families that were literally broken up because of masking and vaccines and travel and all those sorts of things. And oftentimes this was like a parent, the adult child would live in another city, there'd be grandkids involved, and they weren't able to see the people that they loved the most because of this divergent belief in the vaccines and the masking. And many of these families have totally reconciled since then, and it's like this beautiful thing. But as I look out there, I still see some families where there's really some deep conflict that was caused because of this difference in opinion.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking when you hear about families that still aren't talking because of a fight. The masks are long gone, but the rift between the two still exists because forgiveness didn't happen. And that's why the issue of forgiveness was so important to Jesus, because it can make or break relationships. Finding forgiveness does not always come naturally. It does not always come easily. But we're going to send you back to your groups now to learn from each other. How have you been able to experience forgiveness in relationships, especially when it's been hard to feel forgiveness? So share with each other, learn from each other. We will see you back here next week for the last session of Connectivity Problems.